the moment our fellow geeks, dweebs, nerds, and other unfortunates have been fervently waiting for has finally arrived. It's time for TMI, Confessionals of the Nerd Kind. And now, your hosts, Jeff Nerfherder Chandler, Jim Kaiju Baker, and Mike Mjolnir Evans. And now, let's get on with the show. Here is TMI.
We shall begin.
Right.
Let's get into this.
Welcome, everybody.
Hey, welcome back.
Yeah.
It's the Jim and Jeff show this week.
It is. We are down one.
Yes.
Not a surprise to those listening
No.
back.
We saw this coming a mile
We
away.
did.
I think, he literally left the country in an effort to avoid that. Raggedy Ann and Andy, which you've been threatening since day one on this show.
I have. So it's not like it's come as a surprise.
No, but we were hoping it was going to hold off a little bit longer.
If I was to pair it with anything, Toy Story would be the most appropriate.
It's actually, when we get into it, it's amazing how you see just the DNA of what Toy Story took and became. So, well paired. Well paired, my friend. Well paired.
And we're not talking about Adrienne Barbeau for once.
Not this time.
So we have some news, right? As always.
We do. Let's start off with some news. Let's see. A while ago, we talked about the Academy Museum of Motion Picture, that they're building out this massive museum.
Yes.
Out in, I think it's Pasadena, and it keeps getting backed up. It looks phenomenal. It looks like it's just going to be, it's probably like every Planet Hollywood you saw back in the 90s, just chock full of props, signatures, costumes, and all kinds of crazy stuff, and I can't wait. But they keep backing up the date, and I guess right now they're saying that there's no way it's going to be open until well into 2020. But they just acquired the last Jaws shark prop, Bruce.
Do we know how many there were to begin with?
There were 4. Apparently, there were 4, and this is the last one to be made from the actual mold.
Full body?
It is a full body, and it's being restored. If you follow the Academy Museum of Motion Picture on Instagram, they were posting pictures taken by Greg Nicotero, of all people, showing the process in which they're restoring this. And I guess the only thing that's really missing right now are his eyes and teeth.
I see. You know what's always curious to me about the original Bruce prop, as they
with the big rubbery
are his jowls.
Jowls, right?
And I think
Which I have now.
It must be hiding some kind of joint in the mouth. So,
yeah, it has to be, right? Yeah, because they just flap uncontrollably when he comes out of that water.
Yeah, it's not really I think a natural feature of the great white is to have jowls, in the corners of his mouth.
You know what? It's I mean, that whole story of the shark not working is just legendary. And I think maybe it'll take away some of the mystique. Although anybody who's gone to the Universal, you get a pretty up close. I mean, that's a replica. It's got to be about as close as you're going to get.
It's true. And unfortunately, they don't have the Jaws feature anymore in Orlando. They still do in California. It's part of the regular Hollywood, the tour that you get in Universal Studios.
I actually had my my legs scalded when I was on that ride because there's like explosions and stuff.
In Orlando or in California?
No, the one out in California.
Oh. Okay.
And the steam came. I was on the outer edge.
What did you have, your leg hanging out of the tram?
I don't know what was going on, but I do remember like being burned. And I'm just like, that's not part of the ride.
All legs, feet, arms, hands, in the
right, that's right. I know, right? You want to touch that thing. So I thought that was pretty cool. You're going to see the Jaws prop.
Yeah.
Restored, completely restored. There was, I was at a show probably about 2 or 3 years ago in Jersey, and they had a bunch of props from Jaws, from like some of the buoys and the signs and a couple of the air tanks and harpoons. So I don't know if these are like, because this shark came from a private collector who owned it and then donated it to the museum in like 2016.
How do you acquire such a thing?
That you got to have inside
Yeah.
somebody, because I guess the rest of them just kind of, I mean, they're all like fiberglass and made out of, you know, latex rubber.
Right. And where do you keep it? You know, I'd like to put it in my living room right above the TV.
Put a little plexiglass on top of him, and you could just
like a singing, one of those singing trouts that you press a button and it sings.
You need a sizable wall. So anyway, you got that to look forward to. Netflix and Apple TV have both announced that they're going to be bringing in picture-in-picture feature. I don't think my TV even has that function anymore.
Well, explain to the commoners what this even means, Jeff.
So basically, you can watch 2 TV shows at the same time. Usually you got your main screen. This was only good. The only time I ever used this is if I was like flipping through channels and I didn't want to have to go back to the channel I was on. Or Sunday when you're watching 2 football games at once. So you have one main picture, and then you have a smaller square in the lower right-hand corner.
Yes.
With the other station, and you could switch back and forth between the 2. But apparently, both are now giving you the option that you can stream 2 shows at once. Do we need it?
So
Did I want it?
Is this to curb any marital dysfunction in the house so the husband and wife can watch their shows simultaneously?
I don't know, but it's not like side by side. It's not like one's over the other. I don't know.
So you still have one in like a little tiny picture and then
correct,
the main
right.
picture?
And it's muted. You can't have the volume going to the
So
same
I was thinking if both of you have your own remotes, and you know how the remotes have that earbuds feature now, so you could just plug into the remote and then you could both watch your show.
and still sit on the same couch and just watch completely different things.
Now, on your news agenda, speaking of Netflix, do you happen to have the Good Omens controversy on your agenda for the news?
No. Bring this up.
If not, all right, I'll bring it up.
We're talking about this next week.
Yeah, this is a quick preview of what we're going to cover next week.
I didn't know that there was a controversy. I've heard nothing but great things. I've watched it for
the controversy is a Christian group is saying that it does not portray the Catholic faith in good light, so they are calling for a boycott. But that's not the end of the story.
Okay.
They're calling for a boycott on Netflix. The show doesn't even air on Netflix.
They didn't even do their research.
They have demanded that Netflix remove Good Omens, and Netflix responded in kind, we already have.
We have. Your wish has been granted.
And then Amazon, on their part, Amazon also issued a statement saying, as a preemptive strike, that they've also removed Stranger Things. So they're
nice.
Well,
that's great. There's nothing hypes up a show like controversy. I got one other news item. It's not really a new news item, but it's something that I was oblivious to, and I don't know if you've heard anything about this, which was back in 2000. There was a Superman script written by J.J. Abrams, set to be directed by McG, called Superman Flyby.
No idea.
Right, because we know about the Kevin Smith at one point was writing something. We know about the Tim Burton Superman with Nick Cage. I'm oblivious that this thing even existed, but apparently one of the directors of Into the Spider-Verse was an animator and a storyboard artist at the time, and he's been sharing these storyboards on his Instagram page. The plot is just insane. And I'm so glad they didn't make this thing. Ready? I'm gonna read you the description, which is Superman Flyby was an origin story that included Krypton besieged by a civil war between Jor-El and his corrupt brother Kata-Zor. Before Kata-Zor sentences Jor-El to prison, Kal-El is launched to Earth to fulfill a prophecy. Adopted by Jonathan and Martha Kent, he forms a romance with Lois Lane and the Daily Planet. However, Lois is more concerned with exposing Lex Luthor, written as a government agent obsessed with UFO phenomena. Clark reveals himself to the world as Superman, brings Kata-Zor's son, Ty-Zor, and 3 other Kryptonians to Earth. Superman is defeated and killed, and visits Jor-El, who committed suicide on Krypton while in prison, in Kryptonian heaven. Resurrected, he returns to Earth and defeats the 4 Kryptonians, while the script ends with Superman off to Krypton, leaving a cliffhanger for a sequel.
Is this like a 6-hour odyssey? It sounds like it's too much for one movie.
Not only that, it's not super. So here's the weird part, which was, I guess, Brandon Routh and Henry Cavill both screen tested, including Brendan Fraser. Robert Downey Jr. was already locked in to play Lex Luthor. Now, this was 2000, so well before Iron Man. Shia LaBeouf was attached as Jimmy Olsen. Scarlett Johansson and Selma Blair were in talks to play Lois Lane. Christopher Walken was in talks to play Perry White, and Joel Edgerton.
Christopher Walken.
And then Joel Edgerton, I guess, had auditioned for this Tizor character. This is the most bizarre thing I've heard. I don't know anything about this. When did Superman Returns come out? That was Singer.
2005, six?
Something in there. So that had to have come right on the heels of this.
I would have been down for this just for Christopher Walken as Perry White.
As Perry White.
Superman, your powers, they're amazing.
A Kryptonian. Oh my God. So I'm going to throw that in the WTF file. So there you go. That's my news.
Okay, so we have a revisiting of the Toy Story universe. Surprisingly, I was pretty shocked when I saw the first Toy Story 4 trailers because, like everybody else, I was of the opinion that Toy Story 3 would be the end of it because it really seemed to wrap up the entire saga pretty well with a beautiful bow.
Yeah, Bo Peep.
Yeah, no pun intended there.
No pun intended. I mean, we did have a couple like little shorts, and they did those little special TV movies afterwards. The Toys That Time Forgot.
Toys That Time Forgot, and then there was that Halloween special where they're in the motel.
Right, Toys of Terror or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had a couple little shorts. The one I remember was the Barbie and Ken on Vacation.
Yes, as bonus features, I think, of Toy Story 3.
Right. So they kind of took those characters once they were given to Bonnie and ran with it a little bit. But yeah, I agree with you. Once they announced Toy Story 4, you're kind of like, it's just a cash grab. You couldn't end that trilogy any more perfect than I mean, you and I have had this discussion, which you can't watch that last 5 minutes when Andy gives away his toys and not well up inside like a blubbering 4-year-old.
Depending on what age you are, I think one of the great things about Toy Story 3 is that it speaks to different generations in a different way. Because a little kid could watch it. Andy is giving Bonnie the new toys. Now she's going to play with them, so they're not going to be lonely anymore. So maybe that's how a kid looks at it. Somebody that's in their 20s, maybe of college age, that is Andy, might look at it and be sad and be very emotionally affected because they're leaving their childhood behind. And
as a parent, too, seeing your kid.
And then, as somebody older, as a parent, you're blubbering away because their own child is leaving their child. You know, they're thinking of their own child in those terms. As leaving childhood behind.
Yeah, but then you think of the 45-year-old toy collector who's crying because he knows that at one point Andy's going to go back to the antique store and buy these things for highly overpriced just to reclaim his childhood.
Yes, and
I used to have these when I was a kid.
And I think that little voice exists in all of us. Of course, that was at least one tear shed at the end of Toy Story 3 because he's actually giving up his toys.
Yeah, because we become so emotionally attached to these things.
So because of this, I don't think that there's many movies that are more emotional than Toy Story 3, especially those last 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to get through without at least a hitch in your throat. Like the first time you watch it, forget it. You know, tears come freely.
Well, even when they're in the incinerator and they all think they're going to die and they start holding hands. Oh, forget that.
I know.
My son still makes fun of me because I happened to take him to a birthday party and it was a movie. And I was sitting 2 rows behind all the kids and I was just sobbing. And what's really bizarre, that was 9 years ago. 9 years since that movie came out.
I know. It just goes to show as you get older, how quickly time goes by.
Yeah.
So yes, we do pick up. The story takes place 9 years previously. We get a little prologue in the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, so we immediately go back to Andy, which I was very surprised. I was shocked.
So it begins with a rainstorm. I'm not sure how RC, the remote control, got out. Maybe he was just left outside by...
Well, Andy comes running in with all the toys, so I think that he had an armful of all of them, so I think that RC just kind of, he's a vehicle. You can leave him out in the rain. Yeah.
So he's about to get washed away. The toys mount a rescue attempt, and they successfully get him. But at the same time, somebody mysteriously comes to the house to take Bo Peep. And I never realize she was a lamp. I just thought she was a
Okay. Dog. I'm so glad that you said that because I immediately was this like retcon that she's porcelain? Because I don't remember. And the thing is, first of all, I'm going to say I saw the 3D, and the 3D, especially that opening scene in the rain, is phenomenal.
Really?
The animation in this is so well realized. It's crazy. We'll get into the whole direction and just the lighting and all this other stuff that's going on with these characters. But you see it throughout that she's shiny she's definitely got a different sheen than the other toys. And Toy Story 2 was on the other night, and you see that a little bit, but in this movie, it's very obvious. Even the sound effects, because it is clink, 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 So I thought that they retconned that to make her porcelain, that she was part of the lamp, but without going back and watching the original to see where she came from. We do know that she was Bonnie's toy. She came from Bonnie's room. Not Bonnie, Molly, Andy's little sister.
Andy's sister, yes.
Right.
Because in Toy Story 3, you just get kind of a throwaway reference that Bo Peep is no longer with them.
Right.
You never know what happened to her, but in the first 5 minutes, you do figure out what happened. Somebody purchases her, but it's a very shady transaction.
Right, he comes in the middle of the night. It's pouring rain. He just takes a buck. All right, thanks. I'm out of here. It's like, oh, are you sure? Are you sure, Molly? Yeah, I'm good. You can take it. Right. You're like, do we really need this movie? Do I need to fill in the whole? They could have done a little 5-minute short to fill me in on what happened to Bo Peep. I wasn't laying awake at night wondering what happened to Bo. But this is really not Bo. It is Bo's movie, but this is Woody. It
is definitely Woody's movie, because they want you to think that it's Forky's movie to begin with, as in the first 10, 15 minutes, but it's not the case.
But you can't have this movie without Forky. Forky is just brilliant.
Forky is the catalyst of the story, yes.
Yeah.
And Forky is very funny. So the setup of this movie is that the toys are still with Bonnie, and she's starting kindergarten. And the first day, it's actually orientation, Woody has kind of been relegated to the closet. He is no longer her favorite toy, if he ever was. Woody, though, is still trying to hold on to his position as head toy, and he still kind of runs the toys in the room, even though he's no longer the favorite one.
Yeah, Dolly's kind of taken over.
On Bonnie's first day of kindergarten, Woody realizes that somebody has to go with her, one of the toys, to make sure everything goes well. So he sneaks into her backpack and accompanies her. And she is out of sorts. She's upset to be there, and Woody kind of helps her through by taking some stuff from the garbage. She's supposed to make a craft project with everybody else, but because she's sequestered herself, she doesn't have all the necessary tools, and she creates Forky.
And I'm going to call, well, first of all, we should have at least up front that we will be spoiling this movie. If you have not seen this, don't listen any further, right, because we really get into it. But I'm going to call foul on this a little bit, because the one thing that we've established in all these movies is that these toys have kind of like a set of rules to live by, and they don't come to life in front of anybody. And yet Woody takes chance after chance to help out Bonnie. He's running around in this kindergarten setting with kids everywhere, a teacher, and I don't know. He took a lot of chances. I guess maybe it just showed his desperateness.
He did, and it's maybe
make her happy.
It shows the fact that he's done, because this maybe plays into the end of the movie where he's no longer playing by the rules anymore. Right?
No, they're not. And the same thing, we'll say Buzz breaks the rules as well at one point. So, yeah, it was interesting. There's a lot of existential stuff going on with this movie.
It's not as emotional as Toy Story 3, but it gets somewhat close to it in its own way. It's a totally different beast.
Yeah, we'll get into it.
So we've got, after this orientation day of kindergarten, I guess Bonnie's family is going on one last road trip for the summer before she begins school.
Yep.
So she wants to take Forky because she's bonded with this toy, because the toy has helped her get through her orientation day of kindergarten.
Right. So now Woody's whole mantra is, we need to protect Forky. And Forky has the greatest, because Forky's like, I was good. I'm a fork. I'm trash.
Yeah.
I may be good for some chili, maybe good for a soup, and then I get thrown away. So there's this brilliant montage of Forky just continuing to try and chase himself, run it, and he's got these stupid little tongue depressor feet, so he can't really walk, and his Google eyes are all over the place, and he's trying to throw himself in the trash, and every time he does so, Woody has to retrieve him.
Bonnie made a friend in class.
She's already making friends.
No, she literally made a new friend. Come on, let's get you out of there. You got this. Good. Everyone, I want you to meet Forky.
Golly, Bob House. Look how long his arms are.
And there's a great scene where she's sleeping with him, and he keeps jumping into the garbage, and Woody keeps throwing him back out, and he jumps in the garbage, and it takes its toll on Woody.
And as you were saying before, how Woody is no longer playing by the rules, part of that is because of Forky, because he's got to go after Forky, because Forky doesn't consider himself a toy, so he's not part of this world, so he's garbage as far as he's concerned.
Right. Yeah, that's where I belong. And he has this nice little speech with Forky. You don't understand. You are given the most precious gift of making a child happy. That's what any toy wants to be. That's all they want to do. That's their goal, is to just please your owner. And Forky's like, screw this.
No, he does not get it at all.
I don't want any part of it. I'm not a toy. I will say it's unfortunate that a lot of the other main characters had little to do.
It's true. They were very much in the background behind Woody and Forky. Even Buzz was relegated to second string.
I hate to say this, but I feel like they dumbed him down for some reason. And maybe that's because in 3 he got reset.
Yeah, that could be.
So he's not the world, I don't know. And they downplayed the whole Jesse Buzz romance. There's none of that there. And no Barbie and Ken.
Well, the Barbie is shown briefly.
In the
very beginning.
In the beginning. And there's multiple Barbies.
But there's no Ken, yeah.
No, and they all
Michael
live in,
Keaton.
No.
After we have the setup for the road trip, Forky escapes.
He throws himself out the window.
And Woody, of course, goes after him solo.
Right. So now you're like, oh, here we go again. It's just another, we need to go. He's a lost toy. We need to go save him.
Because Woody has said to the other toys that I'll meet you at the RV park. So he finds Forky, and they're walking along the road. Forky keeps asking Woody to carry him because he can't walk very well.
Right. Carry me? No.
During this road trip together, as they're walking, Woody makes Forky realize what his true potential is. And then Forky realizes, okay, now I'm a toy. Now I want to get back to Bonnie. And the story kind of winds them into an antique shop. They meet a character called Gabby, who is an old 50s style doll that's in the antique shop that surrounds herself.
She's like a Chatty Cathy, right? Did they not have the rights to Chatty Cathy?
I know, yeah.
Just call it Chatty Cathy.
They would easily.
Right, yeah. At this point, I mean, yeah.
Sorry to bother you, but...
Why, you're not a bother at all. My name is Gabby, and this is my very good friend, Benson.
Oh, Woody, pleasure to meet you.
Well, it's nice to meet you, Woody. And you are...
This is Forky.
I'm trash.
So there's a ventriloquist's dummy, the classic ventriloquist dummy look that if you ever seen Magic with Anthony Hopkins, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But so there's one called Benson, and then he's got a bunch of lackeys around him. Now, how they end up at the antique shop is not really important. It's just the fact that
because nobody wants ventriloquist toys. Because they're creepy as all get out.
They are, and they don't speak either. So they're kind of Gabby's
I got the
slaves.
I got the whole Goosebumps, the R.L. Stein vibe. But you know that if you know your Toy Story history, Woody originally was set up as a ventriloquist dummy. Before they pinned him as a cowboy, he was a ventriloquist dummy. And then he morphed from there into like a army guy. And then I think it was Bud Lucky who actually recommended maybe we change him into a cowboy so that you had that juxtaposition between the Old West and the New Space Age when Buzz comes in. So once they hit on that, but yeah, his original design was a dummy, a ventriloquist dummy. Okay. And he actually had the hinged mouth design for quite a while.
So are you saying that this is kind of a?
I think it might have been a little
hat to that.
Listen, we'll get into it as well. Which there's thousands of nods, just like Godzilla, where like all these little callbacks to the other Godzilla movies. There are little Easter eggs hidden throughout this entire movie of past Pixar movies. So
the Tin Toy being the most obvious.
Tin Toy was right up there. Yep. So we get to meet the Tin Toy, but there's some other stuff going on. I didn't catch all of them, but I did do some research, and there's a lot of stuff going on.
So yeah, in this antique store,
which is phenomenal. It's so well put together. The antique store. It's probably like 90% of all antique stores you and I walked into looking for these toys to begin with.
You can almost smell it that you're in there.
Yeah, just the mustiness, and they're creeping behind the cabinets and all the cobwebs and the dust. I mean, it was so well realized. It was like taking Toy Story 2, the toy store, and just make it. There's so many Easter eggs going on in here. You couldn't even see what was going. There's signs everywhere and paintings and old board games. So there was a lot of eye candy.
And Gabby is among all this stuff. And she notices right away that Woody has a pull string, which she does as well. but it doesn't work. It's never worked, her pull string apparatus. You can tell that as soon as she sees Woody, that's what she wants, and she tries to keep Woody there so they can do a switch. Now, what they reveal is, in Gabby, is a tiny little record that plays on her mechanism.
Is that like a little
really
Teddy Ruxpin? Is it like a Teddy Ruxpin? I don't know if that's accurate. I mean, if I tore open these little dolls, would they all have a little record? A little record. I don't know.
Now, apparently her record is fine, but it's the apparatus that plays it that's broken. So
she said she was defective out of factory.
Now, these things can speak with no problem. It's just what they would actually say when you pull their string that's affected.
And she's fixated on the shop owner's granddaughter, Harmony, who comes in there all the time. And here Gabby sits up on the shelf, but because her pull string doesn't work, she's never had the love of a kid.
So she thinks if she gets that fixed, that Harmony will want her. So that's her whole reason for being in this movie. That's why she wants Woody to stay.
Yes. We didn't bring up why he walked into the antique store. Because they were well on their way.
There's so much going on. I'm like, I don't really remember why he made it in there.
Well, because you pointed out the fact that he had made Forky realize that you do have a purpose. You are a toy. We need to get back to Bonnie. So now they see the RV park and they're on their way. And as they're passing the antique store, which ironically enough is called Second Chances, which they could have just called this whole movie Second Chances, because that's really what it comes down to. So a little foreshadowing going on there. He sees Bo Peep's lamp in the window.
Yes.
And so then he's like, Bo? So then that's what the catalyst where he drags Forky into the antique store to find Bo.
And speaking of Bo, he doesn't find her in the antique store, but he does manage to escape once all the ventriloquist dummies and Gabby try to get that voice box out of him. But when he escapes, he leaves Forky behind. So he ends up encountering Bo outside the antique store in a local playground. And she's been kind of harboring there with some other toys that are free. They're just free. She
purposely decided that she didn't need an owner. She had other, and I loved her awakening. She's a much more badass, say what you will about the whole world of feminist willpower here. She's a great character. And I actually was surprised that it was still Annie Potts doing the voice, because it's a very low-key performance. She really tempered her twang, and she's heartfelt, and she has a completely different philosophy from what Woody has. And he was like, I could never have survived like you did. And she's like, no, we're just doing our thing, man. And they're out saving other toys.
Funny that you mentioned Annie Potts, because this movie, obviously with the exception of Tom Hanks and Tim Allen and the main toys, I had a really difficult time identifying the voices that I was hearing on some of the new characters. I'm like, so it preoccupied me for most of the movie.
Yeah, well, that's just because we'll get into that a little bit more with Raggedy Ann and Andy, which is, these animated movies have made such a big deal about getting these big name stars. And I'll tell you right now, did you catch Mel Brooks?
I saw him in the credits, but there was no way I would have caught him while I was watching the movie.
His voice is so iconic, and I heard him. His character was Melephant Brooks. So he was an elephant, must be. But Carol Burnett, Betty White, and Carl Reiner were all in. It's such a throwaway, especially when they start seeing the other toys. There's a whole scene where Bo takes him to the arcade. They go inside a pinball machine, and it's like this rave. It's like the cantina scene from Star Wars, but it's all toys.
It's all free toys that don't belong to a kid, that are just on their own,
hiding out. And that's where you get a lot of those Easter eggs you mentioned before. Tin Toy.
Yep, he's in there.
Pixar shorts. You actually see Star Wars action figures, Obi-Wan and Walrus Man, and Obi-Wan chops off his arm.
And speaking of surprising celebrity voices, this is where we meet Duke Kaboom.
He is so well realized.
And he is voiced, and I could not believe this, by Keanu Reeves.
Because again, he's low key. And he's Canadian. So he's an Evel Knievel, basically. But he's Canadian.
But he's the Canadian Evel Knievel with an Alpha Flight type outfit as well, with the maple leaf on his back.
Duke.
Who's the cowboy?
Duke, meet Woody. Woody, meet
Duke Kaboom, Canada's greatest stuntman. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it was Keanu Reeves' idea to have him pose, to just constantly be changing his poses. So once Pixar's like, that's brilliant, they just kind of went with it. So this guy is constantly posing. He's always like in these action, holding onto the handlebars with both legs in the air kind of a thing. And he had a great little catchphrase was, "Yes, we Canada." Did you catch the fact that the address for the Second Chance Antique Store was 1986, which is the year that Pixar was founded?
Yeah, so once Woody escapes from the antique shop and he finds Bo Peep again, it kind of goes from chase scene to chase scene to chase scene. They're trying to get Forky out of the antique shop, and Gabby is trying to get Woody to get his voice box.
Yeah. And the remaining toys are trying to keep Bonnie's parents from leaving the RV park because obviously Forky and Woody are not there.
It's true. And Bonnie freaks out briefly when she realizes that Forky isn't there, but then apparently she forgets about it.
Yeah.
And she's ready to leave as well. Right. Now, we've got other characters that come into this. Ducky and Bunny.
Genius.
Genius. Well done. Michael Key and Jordan Peele, who's now
Key and Peele
director.
They have some of the best lines and scenes.
They are from one of these Carney type games of chance.
Right, and they're hanging on the wall.
These plushes. You can never win as a kid. You only win if you do win anything. It's like a tiny toy that's never the big one that's hung up on the back wall.
Right, and we're introduced to them because Buzz escapes out the truck and he tries to go find Woody. But this is also where I call foul, which all of a sudden Woody and Buzz have completely different dialogue on their pull string and on their buttons that we've never heard in the other three.
Yeah, I know. Woody has all these sayings that
like all of a sudden Woody's got multiple, but Buzz had like. Maybe he just never pressed that button. I'd have to go back, but they took a leap of logic in that one where Woody gave him a speech about his inner voice. And that's where I'm saying where Buzz was dumbed down because he's like, inner voice? Who is it? Who's talking to you? And he goes, I am. It's my inner voice. So Buzz embraces that and he just keeps, what do I do? What would Woody do? He kept saying, what would Woody do? So he'd press his button and whatever the little directive was, and that's what he would do.
So as we get towards the end, there's a big rescue sequence, and it turns out that Woody is grabbed by Gabby again. And in order, she makes a deal where she'll give up Forky if Woody gives up his voice box, if they do a switch. So he does. So Woody gets the broken voice box, so his pull string no longer works, and then Gabby's does. So then Gabby works. Harmony picks her up, pulls the pull string, hears the voice, and doesn't want her anyway. And
that was heart-wrenching.
That was
because it was like now Forky's like completely bought into what Gabby's doing because he believed what Woody told him, which is a toy is the most special thing. So he was behind Gabby getting access to this girl, and as they're walking away. He goes, it's happening. It's about to happen. And the little girl there, she's sitting there sipping her tea or reading a book, and Gabby's up and all of a sudden her little pull string works, and she goes over and she takes her off the shelf and she looks at her, and she's just like, enamored with this doll, and you can see it in the doll's eyes, like I'm actually being held by a kid. And then the grandma comes in. She's like, what are you doing? Oh, I found this doll. Oh, that's great. Do you want it? Nah. And she just drops. And you just like what was it, Toy Story 2 when Woody gets dropped in the garbage can? That slow descent into the box, and she's just laying there all despondent.
So things do eventually look up for Gabby. As the toys are making their way back to the RV before the family leaves, they encounter a little girl that we've not met before. This is not Bonnie, but a little girl that's lost at the carnival. That's where the RV is parked, like in the midst of this carnival. And Woody and the gang figures out that this is where Gabby has her chance. They position Gabby right behind this little girl who's crying right by a food vendor. Nobody can see her. And they pull the pull string. She hears her. She turns around and she picks up Gabby, and immediately it makes her feel better. And then the police officer walks by and she walks out with a doll saying, I can't find my parents. So Gabby at least has a happy ending. And played by Christina Hendricks, by the way, who does a phenomenal job.
Yes.
And then they make it back to the RV. So here's the big spoiler. Here's the end of the movie, the emotional payoff of the movie. Woody lets go. He gets Forky back to Bonnie, and then he makes a big decision, and he decides to join Bo Peep. He has made himself a free toy. He has emancipated himself from Bonnie, and that is the big reveal of the end of this movie.
So when he's having that confrontation after Forky is brought back and he's reunited with all the toys, and Buzz just says, Woody, she'll be okay. And he kind of looks back at Bo and he goes, Bonnie will be okay. And he gave him permission to just go. And I was like, right then and there, I was like, cue the tears, baby, because
it is. Now, I read something where Tim Allen, he could not get through that scene without bawling himself.
Yeah, no, it's very, and you know what's funny is that I have it in my notes, and when you were just saying this, it's even more so, that Woody is the Captain America of this movie, because at the end, he gives in to his mission and just makes himself happy.
And it really is his own given mission, because nobody else is asking him of this. He's no longer the top toy, but he still acts as if he is, and that he needs to carry that shield.
Yeah. So, it's not the emotional avalanche that you get from Toy Story 3, but it is. So I think that Toy Story, the first trilogy, is really Andy's story. And this is not the end of Woody's story, but the beginning of something new. That's what I was saying before, the name of the antique store, Second Chances. That's really what this is all about.
Yeah.
Is that Woody has taken this existential dilemma, which is, and I think us as parents would have to deal with this, which you spend 16, 18 years of your life protecting your child and nurturing them to go out in the world. And then when they go, you're like, well, now what do I do? Like, what's my job? What's my purpose?
You know what? It's funny that you say that, because I was equating this to Woody being like the old forgotten parent in the retirement home, and the kid doesn't need him anymore. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll get there, but yeah, it's just, he went from the mission that he needs to protect Andy and Bonnie to this new mission of, I'm just going to help other kids. I'm going to help other toys. It was
the most
very satisfying.
The most upsetting part of this is the fact that Woody and Buzz split up. Not so much that it's Woody and Bonnie, because you never really had the emotion.
No, right. You got that little bit of connection at the end. I mean, she plays with him, and and I like the fact that they brought that scene back into the opening just to remind you of that emotional connection.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. I mean, you do, as they're driving away in unison, the two of them, to infinity and beyond. Yes. They kind of finish each other's sentence, and you realize they are still emotionally connected. And listen, this could very well go on, and they could make Toy Story 5.
Yeah, they could, but you couldn't do it without Woody and Buzz. They couldn't.
But now movie. You do. Somehow they get reunited.
Yeah,
you can't do it. But like I said, you said at the beginning, Toy Story 3 was such a perfect coda to just the entire Toy Story.
And it still is. It still is. As you said, that's Andy's trilogy. Begins with Andy and ends with Andy. But this is a different Second Chances. It's going in a different place. It's a totally different. You can,
and it's very satisfying for me. Growing up I mean, I was an adult when the first one came out, but these movies have been since 95. The first one came out.
Yeah.
So we've lived with these for a long time.
And it's just funny to look at the first Toy Story now. The graphics on the toys are pretty much unchanged. It's cleaner now, but it's like the human element is night and day.
Yes, you look at the old Andy, even Sid. I mean, Sid was creepy. And you look at how they render Bonnie.
It's like watching the Dire Straits video, Money for Nothing.
Right?
That's what it's like.
Little CG guy.
Yeah.
Well, that's the power of Pixar, which was, say what you will about Lucasfilm, but Lucas always took his money and reinvested it back into the industry. So he created this company, they just started out with TV commercials, but they had to build this software from nothing. They knew what they wanted to do, but they had to build the software. Just like ILM had to create something to make all those special effects for Star Wars. These guys had to create this, and I think they still use it. It's called Renderman. But you're right. I mean, it's night and day. And this, we talked about it a little bit, which is the animation is so realistic. It is so glorious to look at. The lighting, the colors, the emotional on these characters. The camera angles were completely different than anything we've seen in Toy Story before, because there seemed to be a lot of hero upshots, which we've never really gotten from these characters. We've always gotten, they're so small and they're tiny, and sometimes, you always get them like a helicopter shot of the little tiny running around. And I think for the first time, you really see them in a very heroic kind of light. So it was very well done. It was.
I agree. And the knives, unfortunately, are out again from reviewers. I see a lot of the word unnecessary in headlines for reviews for this movie. And Again, that's because they're comparing it to Toy Story 3.
Right.
But in my
Which we
opinion,
went into as well.
It's two completely different animals. It's starting off on another story. I don't think it's unnecessary. I think as long as these movies are entertaining, they're absolutely necessary, and it's better than 90% of what you're going to see out there now. So
yeah, and this has been in development for a long time. It's not like they just, because that was when Pixar was taken over by Disney. They immediately just started like the sequelizing everything. Well, this movie made money. Let's make 2 and 3 Cars.
Right.
Like,
but again, Pixar themselves were saying that they thought Toy Story 3 was such a perfect ending that they would not do another one unless the right story presented itself. Yeah. And then they got so excited about this idea of making it Woody's story rather than a child's story that they decided to go forward. And everybody was on board once they read it.
Yep. I enjoyed it immensely. And there's the scenes, you brought up Duke Kaboom. But there's a scene at the end where Ducky and Bunny, they kept having these fantasy sequences where they were like beating up the old lady or whatever. Here's what we would do. And that was reminiscent to me of Ant-Man when Luis would start the stories. But then at the end, they're telling Duke they become these giant versions of themselves with laser eyes chasing the carny down the midway. And Duke is just like, you have laser eyes? Whoa. Which is Keanu Reeves. So.
And I love the fact that Duke Kaboom inserts himself into the Pixar logo at the very end.
I told you. I missed it. But, and that's so funny you say that because, like, just the opening with the logo, and you get the little Luxo Jr., the little lamp that comes out. Like, to me, that's the whole charm of Pixar, that they can, it's a testament to the fact that they can take such an inanimate object and just imbue it with so much emotion and character with this stupid little lamp.
It's true. My son, when he was younger, was obsessed with that lamp. He would draw that lamp over and over again. We had to go to Lowe's and buy him a lamp.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so
that is the true power.
The first time that we took him to Disney in Orlando, we took him to Hollywood Studios. I had been obviously many times before then, but this was his first time. The time before we had gone with him, they had first opened that Toy Story ride at Hollywood Studios, Toy Story Mania. And right across from it, there was like a pillar. And every once in a while, I think 15 minutes on the hour, from inside this pillar, the Luxo lamp would come out and it would do a little hop across and then go down another pillar. So people would kind of stand there and wait for
very cool. Waiting for like Old Faithful.
So when I went with my son 5 years later, he was 4 years old. It was his first trip to Disney, and he was in the midst of this Pixar obsession. So we stood there outside this pillar. Nothing happens.
No.
I'm telling him, just wait. It's going to come. It's going to come. We've got the cameras ready. And so finally an employee walks by, and I said, hey, isn't the lamp going to come out? And they said, you remember the lamp? He said,
apparently.
And the guy tells me that was like maybe 6 months we had that operating. Really? And then Pixar made us take it down because they don't consider that a Disney property, the lamp. So they were going to
Oh, man. Were you able to at least find like a video on YouTube to show him?
No, I never did.
What a letdown for the kid.
He was beside himself. He started to cry. We had to get him on another ride to make
I'm gonna cry.
So that was disappointing.
That's amazing. But that's the power. That right there is the power. Oh, we didn't talk about Combat Carl. We actually got to meet Combat Carl.
Carl Weathers is Combat Carl.
Carl Weathers. Because in the first Toy Story, when they're trying to rescue the toys from Sid, and Sid's like torching something on the grill, you just hear Woody go, it's a Combat Carl. Mm-hmm. And you go Combat Carl. But yeah, you're right, Carl Weathers. And then there's 3 of them. And at one point, they all give Woody a high five. And the other one's just standing there, and Woody leaves them hanging. So that gets paid off in the end credit, too, because he comes out and Duke gives him a high five.
Yeah, while Duke is in the Pixar logo, he gives that little Combat Carl a high five. Yeah,
Combat Carl, who's just a G.I. Joe ripoff. But we had mentioned that there's numerous Pixar. There's a theory out there for years that all of these Pixar movies exist in the same universe. Mm-hmm. And this actually fed into it greatly. The first one that I caught was the Maximus Rex lunch pail. He was the
from the Toys That Time Forgot, right?
Yep. which is my all-time favorite. I love that to no end.
Well, that's no great leap because that took place in the Toy Story universe, that short.
Right, correct. But then we get the Dynaco gas station, which obviously is the sponsor in Cars.
Yes, I didn't put that together, but yeah, now that you say that.
Right, Dynaco. And the other one that I caught, which is at one point when we're first introduced to Bo, and you realize that all the other toys, they're using the RV disguised as a skunk, which was hysterical. And they're scavenging stuff. One of the sheep, her little Billy Goat and Gruff, bring her a grape bottle cap, which is the little pin that Carl is given from the old man in
from Up.
Up, the little badge that him and his wife had.
Now, Jeff, did you actually catch this stuff while viewing, or did you?
I did. Those are the three I caught.
Okay.
And I will tell you, I did not see the Planet Pizza truck.
It had to have been in there, right?
It was.
I didn't see it either.
I'll tell you where it was. It was a tattoo on the Carney's leg.
Oh.
But I didn't catch that I didn't.
You know what's funny? I saw a tattoo on his leg, but he was coming out of a porta potty. So I'm like, is that like a smear on his leg? Is that's what I thought it was. Then I realized it was a tattoo, but I didn't see
it wasn't Planet Pizza. It was Planet Poopy. Yes. So those are the three that I caught. There's a lot of other stuff, especially in the antique store. There's references, callbacks to a lot of the old Pixar, the shorts and stuff like that. And even on the movie poster, and the one movie poster, it's shot from inside the antique store. There's paintings on the wall, and it's the famous painting of the dogs playing poker.
Yes.
But it's Doug from Up is in there.
Oh.
Yeah. So they really peppered it, and I think you'd probably have to go back numerous times to catch a lot of that stuff. The whole truck sequence, when the toys are taking over the truck, reminded me very much of that Finding Dory scene where the octopus is driving the truck and they're trying to so stuff like that. And I didn't know this either, and I'm gonna have to go back, which is Duke Kaboom action figure is actually in Incredibles 2. It's in Jack's crib.
Oh
yeah, which they've always done a good job of kind of hiding the next one. So I think the next movie coming out that we saw previous for was Onward. This is Chris Pratt and Tom Holland.
This is the new Pixar?
Yeah, where it's kind of like the magical lands and they're all like elves or whatever, but now they just live regular lives. You didn't see that trailer at the beginning?
No, because we got in right before the movie started.
Okay, so I don't know if there was something hidden in there, because there's always something, previously, while it's in development. So
I always like to look for the B&L logo, but I don't think it was here.
It might have been in there somewhere in the antique store. There's a lot going on in there. The only other thing I noted, which was I found out if you liked Bo Peep's new look, you can actually buy that entire outfit online for $160.
You mean as a human outfit?
Yeah. Oh yeah, not as a doll outfit.
So you can dress your Barbies as
you can dress just like Bo Peep. So I wonder if they'll just make her a new Disney princess.
If there's anything close to a princess in this movie, it's Bo. So all right, so what kind of buckets would we get?
Oh, I gotta go. Oh, Boo is in there too. Boo from Monsters Inc.
Where?
You see her? She's in the classroom when Bonnie goes to school. Yep. So.
But how do you know that's Boo and not just a random girl?
I'll send you a screen grab, because it's same color outfit, the little pigtails. Just a little silhouette kind of a thing. If somebody catches it, they do. I'm gonna go 4 1/4.
4 1/4.
4 1/4. I enjoyed it, and I thought that, like I said, the 3D I thought was very well done. If you're going to see a movie in 3D, and I can't even tell you the last time, I was kind of forced to see it only because of the screening times. But if you're going to see a 3D movie, this is one that just lends itself to naturally.
Yeah, so. A lot of computer-generated movies, I think, come off better in 3D than a live action would.
And like I said, there's a lot of like these kind of forced up shots and hero shots, and it really there's a lot more atmosphere in this than we've seen before. And usually 3D movies don't work that well in the dark, and the whole antique store, and especially the opening rainstorm, is very dark. So, but it worked very well. Yeah,
I'm going to give it an even 4 for Toy Story 4. You can't help but compare it to the others, but I don't think you should. It really does stand on its own, and it should be taken on its own. Yeah. But you can't have this without that third movie. Yeah. And it does, and it has its own emotional payoff. If you're worried that it's not going to get you to the places that you went to in Toy Story 3, it will. Yeah. Nope. Well done. I enjoyed it. Yeah, and I'm hoping that maybe they do another one. Dory is right.
I'm content.
I welcome it.
I'm content where we are. Move on. Let's make more. Something else.
So should we do our Podcoin shout out?
We should.
Yes.
We've been getting some good, nice listens. We hear you, Podcoiners.
And it's a very novel concept, I think, that you can, if you like to listen to podcasts, why not get points for it towards gift cards like Amazon.com, Starbucks, or charity?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I was on there the other day, and they're adding a bunch of different stuff. So they're constantly adding incentives. They even have like a high-end section now.
So this is Podcoin that we're talking about, a new app that you can listen to your favorite podcasts on, including this one.
This one, please.
And as I mentioned, you can either get points towards gift cards for yourself, or you can get points towards charities.
Yep.
So there's one that we particularly like to talk up called Books for Poor Kids, as opposed to Books for Rich Kids.
Right.
You don't really need the charity. These are books for poor kids. And since we like to use our local library so much, we thought this one would be a good one for TMI to talk up. Give points towards this charity and promote reading. To sign up for it, all you have to do is find Podcoin on your phone, download the app, and you can use our code TMI Nerdkind. That's TMI Nerdkind, all one word. You put that code in right when you download the Podcoin app, and you get 300 points right off the bat. And that's a lot of points.
It really is.
From there, all you really need to do is listen every Wednesday for our new episodes. Get some more points from listening. Listen to our old episodes and get points. And
the entire library. I wonder if you listen to our entire library, how many points you would earn.
I don't know.
We have what? What is this?
This is 64.
64.
Listen to us.
TMI Nerdkind sent you.
Now we go to the concession stand, and I like to pull those antique trailers out for what we're going to talk about. So here in all its glory is the 1977 Raggedy Ann and Andy trailer, and then we'll be right back.
Cool.
I wish I saw the movie again.
The music got to me in a very certain way.
And a heart that's sweet and true.
Raggedy Ann and Andy is a full-length musical adventure. Directed by Richard Williams, winner of an Academy Award for A Christmas Carol, with original songs and music by Joe Raposo, the man who made Sesame Street sing.
And paper flowers.
And if you think it's just a story about dolls, you're in for a surprise.
The plot was really, really good. It was very exciting, a lot of action.
Watch out below!
Best adventure was when they were in the taffy pit. It was really funny.
This is real sticky.
They went in the gooey stuff. I like that big googly thing, that big googly eye thing with eating all that candy.
Who are you?
I am the greedy.
I like it when the king got bigger every time he laughed. And when everybody stopped laughing, he would get smaller and smaller and smaller. The best part was Raggedy Ann and Andy had a pie on their face.
Get this one, sire.
I like the captain.
I have come to claim what is rightfully mine.
I like all the parts the best.
Welcome, Welcome to Looneyland.
One thing we can agree on, Raggedy Ann and Andy has enough fun and excitement, enough crazy joy to keep everyone in the family happy.
He was funny.
It's coming soon from Bob's Merrill, the publishing people of ITT, and released by 20th Century Fox. Raggedy Ann and Andy, the musical adventure that has the critics raving.
I would give it 11 stars.
It's intermission time. Time to pause and refresh at the snack bar. During this short break, you can treat your taste of good food and sparkling cold beverages, including delicious Coca-Cola. If you're hot dog hungry, we have them. Sizzling, juicy hot dogs served in warm, oven-fresh buns. Plus a complete menu of all your favorites. Visit the refreshment center now. Enjoy delicious food and ice-cold Coca-Cola.
Okay, we are back, and this has been a long time coming.
Mike was hoping it was going to be longer.
In the early days of this podcast, when my computer was situated a bit differently, the view that you other guys used to have
was the Raggedy Ann and Andy poster.
Movie poster hanging in the background, which you can no longer see because I've kind of jiggled my laptop around, but it's still there.
It's still there.
And Jeff, every once in a while, has asked me about this poster, and I used to say, "Oh, don't worry, we'll get there. We'll get to this movie."
Well, the time has come.
The time has come, because now that there's a new Toy Story movie out, I always felt that Toy Story really owed a lot to this old Raggedy Ann and Andy movie from, again, 1977 is when it was released. The early part of the year, I think April was when it premiered, a month before another little movie came out called Star Wars.
Yes.
Just to put you in place in time here. The movie played for maybe a weekend at that. I never saw this in the theaters, but it did play occasionally on cable, on HBO, and it was aired once on the CBS network in 1979, probably over the summer, as when these things usually used to air on network TV. And it just made an indelible impression upon me. It is just a very bizarrely animated, very unique movie. It's not a great movie. I don't really fool myself into thinking that it is, but it's just one of these things that really captures a place and a time, and it speaks to me because of that. So it really puts me back in the shoes of a 6-7-year-old watching this.
Right.
So that's why I have a connection to it.
You had mentioned that it was probably on HBO, and my wife, I remember this.
Oh, really? Did she see while you were watching it?
Yep. And I have to say, as much as that we've given you guff over this, it's got a bit of a cult following online. If you look up some of these reviews and whatnot, especially on IMDb, there's a fair amount of people who actually really are probably looking forward to, excited that you finally talking about this movie, which I was blown away by. The only thing that even seemed remotely familiar was that floppy camel. Raggedy Ann and Andy are they're dolls that came out of the Depression, right? They've been around since like the...
They are. So Raggedy Ann and Andy are characters created by Johnny Gruelle, I think his name was. So he also created the camel with the wrinkled knees. So the camel was not a construct of this movie. But yeah, the characters had been around for decades and owned by the Bobbs Merrill Company, I think, who were trying to cash in on what they had here by commissioning this movie in either 75 or 76. And when you watch the opening credits of this movie, first of all, the music is done by Joe Raposo, who was the composer of a lot of the songs you would hear on Sesame Street, a lot of those little 30-second jingles, including the theme of Sesame Street.
Which makes sense, because it does have that kind of...
Yeah, so he is the master of the earworm. So these songs, if you've seen this movie once or twice, they stick in your head. And that's a big detraction of this movie. There's too much music, and I do see that. There is a lot of music in this movie. I think
actually put in my notes, it's all music all the time with these damn dolls.
I know, but I think that's because everybody was afraid to maybe edit Mr. Raposo, who was probably the biggest name behind the scenes at the time. So there's, I think, 14 songs total in this movie.
Do you know there was 10 additional songs that were written but not used?
That's longer than the running time.
Thank the maker. Holy crap. That would just be, because, there's a point where it's like, you can't even have dialogue. They just launch from one song to another.
Yeah, it's like Moulin Rouge pretty soon. It's like that's all that they just use songs to tell the story.
Yeah. But you were talking about the opening credits, and this is one thing that I absolutely adored from the first scene, which is the animators get top billing.
They do, like actors. Actors.
That's right. As a matter of fact, it's not until the end credits that you even realize that Raggedy Ann is Didi Conn. I mean, I knew it was her. I recognized her voice. But this is where Pixar has just failed any animation in the last 25 years. And I think they actually pinpoint Aladdin to be in the kind of catalyst where let's get a big name star like Robin Williams and we're going to put him front and center on the poster. Because that's what it's all about. It's not about the characters, not about the animators. It's all about the voice actor.
Yeah, it goes limper than an animator's handshake.
Exactly.
So the fact that these animators got top billing and not just their name, but associated with which character they animated.
Now, as a cartoonist, Jeff, I wanted to ask you this. How does this work? Because each character has its own animator, and they are credited as such at the beginning of this movie. So I can't see how this works to combine into
someone's got to be doing early storyboards to block that stuff out. So if you have two different characters, because the one thing I noticed, which is Raggedy Andy, doesn't get any credit whatsoever.
I know,
as to who animated him. So is he just a real actor they brought in? And you see there's a slightly different look and feel to these characters. But I would think that whoever animated Annie also had a lot to say with Andy, because they interact more than any other character. But it's all got to be blocked out. It's all probably what scenes are together, and maybe one's animating, and it's all on the old school. It's all on these acetates. You create one frame. So if you got another character in the background, it's on a separate plate, and then they just merge them together.
Now, and apparently the animators that they use, I don't know if you recognized any of the names, Jeff.
I did not recognize any of these.
It was a mix of very old school Disney animators that worked on Peter Pan, Sleeping Beauty, all those, pre 101 Dalmatians movies, and brand new animators. So it was a mix of both.
Yeah. And it's a mishmash. And sometimes it's almost, especially when you get into the greedy as a character, there's so much going on. You're like, what am I even looking at here? It really, you say that this left an impression on you. This would scare the hell out of me as a kid.
That was part of it. This is all freaky. In there.
This is just the freakiest thing I've ever seen in my life. And from right to the beginning,
animation is not clean by any means. It's like it's kind of like that 70s like Fritz the Cat type animation.
Yeah, not to the point where you're seeing drawings, but it's frenetic.
It is. It's like dark back alley animation.
Right. But it does start out as live action. And so, you talk about that Toy Story DNA.
Yeah, let's talk about why this connects to Toy Story.
Yeah.
The story is pretty much the same as you've seen through all the Toy Story movies.
Yep, you hit the beats.
So what we get is this little girl, Marcella, who plays Andy.
Who names their kid Marcella?
Yeah, Marcella. Well, exists from the 20s and 30s version.
Right, I guess so. Not a name that makes it to the top 50 now.
No.
Maybe we can bring
she owns these toys, including Raggedy Ann and Andy. And let me point out that these are the most bizarre gathering of toys that you have ever seen.
Oh, those twins, those creepy twins. The twin dolls are hideous.
Where'd you go? Where'd you go? What did you do and why? Tell us what you saw, dear Raggedy. We're so curious we could die.
It's like, it reminds me of The Shining when I see these twins.
Come play with us, Daddy. Forever and ever and ever.
Yeah, because they have doll heads, but then they have like doll bodies that someone took all their clothes off.
No, you know what it's like? It's like the wooden model that you would get in Michael's art supply store, right?
Just plumpier.
You paint a bizarre face on a wooden model, and then you have the twins.
Or call Mothra.
So these are the type of toys that you get in that toy store that you never wanted to go in. The do-it-yourself.
I don't know who approved these designs, because they are some off-the-wall crazy.
You've got Susie Pincushion, and that's exactly what she is. It's a pincushion with a face and body.
She's like one step removed from Forky. I just found this thing laying around, so it's now a toy.
Then you've got Maxie Fix-It, who is a toy with a bunch of different arms, who has these jagged tools that he uses, like a razor blade that can cut through glass, apparently.
Yeah.
Who's going to give a kid this?
Swiss Army toy. You've
got the captain, who is a pirate inside of a snow globe.
Who is he's
we'll talk about him in a second. Yeah. Then you've got a few others, like you've got a sock puppet, you've got a marionette, and then you've got Raggedy Ann and Andy themselves, who hold the prime position, the Woody position.
Yeah.
In Marcella's toy room. So these toys come to life when she's out of the room, and they flop down where they were when she comes back into the room.
Yep. So that's
lifted, hook, line, and sinker from this movie and put into Toy Story.
Yep.
Maybe they're hoping that nobody would remember this movie.
And then we get introduced to a new character, not Buzz Lightyear. Babette.
Babette, yes. She is Marcella's birthday present from Paris, a doll imported directly from Paris.
Yeah, so the kid gets a doll from Paris, and she opens it in her room with nobody present. It's just kind of like there's like no parental units in sight.
She runs upstairs from a birthday party, and you can hear the party going on downstairs. She opens the present. She takes it out.
Yep.
What it is, it's like a porcelain doll. It reminded me of that Happy Death Day mask. That's Who would want this doll propped up in their corner looking at them as they sleep?
Hello? Is somebody there? Mr. Marbles?
Better than some of the Sally Pincushion or whatever.
It is true. It is better than Sally Pincushion, but creepy nonetheless.
Yes. And she was not a nice doll. I guess were they implying that all French people were snooty?
So she takes Babette, this new doll, out of the box.
Raggedy Ann, you take good care of Babette.
Puts it back, and then she goes back to the party. Then she leaves, and the dolls come to life again. And it's Babette in her own dollhouse, right? And Babette comes out. She doesn't want anything to do with these characters.
No, she wants to go back to Paris.
My name is Raggedy Ann, and this is my brother, Raggedy Andy. Oh, la 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 la. What am I doing in such a terrible place?
She wants to go back to Paris.
And meanwhile, you got the creepy uncle pirate guy up there.
Now, okay, let's talk about him. He looks at Babette from his spyglass, and suddenly he goes into these gyrations, these hip thrusts.
He's like dry humping the parrot.
His mustache becomes erect at one point.
It is so wrong. Oh my!
So that's what I'm talking about when I'm saying how creepy this was as a child. You knew something was off about this cartoon when you were watching it as a kid.
Somebody at one point goes, "Hey, Babette," and I'm like, such a Nebet Costello. I would have called it that Gilbert Godfrey was playing that parrot voice.
Yeah, it does sound like Gilbert Godfrey, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's not totally not, but it sounds like him. So the captain, the pirate, as he realizes he has to get out because he sees Babette and he wants Babette, obviously.
Oh my gosh.
He comes up with the way he makes the other dolls think that he's in trouble and he has to get out of the snow globe. So Raggedy Ann takes one of Maxie's jagged tools, cuts a hole in the glass to get the captain out. Boom! The glass explodes. The captain and the pirate ship come out. And he immediately abducts Babette in a very dark, something that is a very dark scenario.
My treasure, my miracle, my bride!
Where he captures her, ties her up, the pirates abscond with Babette. And what they're going to do with her, who knows?
Or where they're going to go.
That is up to the child's imagination, is what the pirates do to Babette. They go out the window and they're gone. And so Raggedy Ann, who has been given the job of watching over Babette, cannot let this happen. She has to go and rescue Babette from the wiles of the world, and Raggedy Andy accompanies her.
Yes.
So that is the setup of the movie. This is probably the plot of pretty much all the Toy Story movies. At some point, they have to go out into the world to bring back a toy that's the child's favorite.
Yeah.
Forky in Toy Story 4. It was Buzz in Toy Story 1. And it was actually Woody in Toy Story 2 because they had to go back and get Woody from that collector guy.
The collector, toy collector.
So that's the setup of the story. And if you didn't think that this movie was trippy already, as soon as they get out of the nursery, it really takes it up a notch.
Yeah. Was it wrong of me that I wanted them both eaten the minute they started singing and dancing in the garden? I'm just
that song, Candy Hearts and Paper Flowers, goes on for like 10 minutes.
Yeah. And then they reprieve it at the end.
Yeah.
So
it's like you hadn't heard it enough.
And that was actually one of the nicer songs, I hate to say. It was not that bad.
It was one of the more memorable ones. Now, this is where you start to question their relationship. They are brother and sister. Raggedy Ann and Andy are brother and sister, but they do, they're very close. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And as they're walking through the woods trying to find the pirate ship, Raggedy Andy reaches deep into his pants and pulls out a paper flower that Raggedy Ann has made for him at one point, and it makes him feel better. But I'm like, where does he keep this paper flower? What is it next to?
Are you sure they weren't Lannisters? Hey, we're all alone. Got a paper flower in my pants.
So they're not alone for long, though. They encounter the famous camel with the wrinkled knees.
Who's on acid.
Who's seeing camels that nobody else sees.
Andy, it's a camel.
All beat up, too. Oh, I know. I've been running and chasing after my caravan of camels.
Which isn't a trippy scene in itself. It's a caravan of camels. And if you freeze frame this, some of them have long stockinged legs and voluptuous bodies. These camels.
Oh, that's right.
So...
but he should have sounded like Eeyore. Like he just, oh dear.
Because he looks exactly like Eeyore.
Right, because he's just floppy and flumpy, and he's a cool design. Because he's fun to look at, and it's almost like the animator almost separated them into three completely different parts. The head, and then you got the front end of the body and the back end of the body all seem to kind of work independently. They just happen to be attached. Like there's three people inside that costume.
The voice of the camel, it's more like Roger Miller, like a King of the Road type stuff. He's got like this twang to him. And as you said, he launches into a song called Blue, which if you have The Muppet Show Season 3, Helen Reddy hosts an episode of The Muppet Show and sings this song.
Really?
During The Muppet Show.
But the camel didn't come out.
The camel didn't come out, no. So he sings his own song, and then immediately afterwards, he sees the caravan again that Raggedy Ann and Andy can't see. He starts running after it, and they fall into a taffy pit.
But the point, he tells the story. He's got a backstory that he was thrown away.
Yes.
Which is Jessie's story in Toy Story 2.
By a mom who was a pretty lady, but kind of mean.
Kind of mean. Oh, man.
Yeah, it is Jesse's backstory, and again with the twang, almost like that could be Jesse with his he
was just missing the hat,
cowboy twang. Yeah,
it is a true testament to our friendship that I stuck this out, dude. I'm telling you right now, because once we met that greedy, and it's just a blob.
You see, this is where the movie ramps up for me when you meet the greedy. Like once they're out of the playroom and then they're into this trippy world, it just gets trippier and trippier.
And you have to wonder, where the hell does Marcella live? That they're encountering all this stuff outside the house. She lives in the Twilight Zone.
Is like a giant. It's like Marjorie the Trash Heap from Fraggle Rock, right? But it's made of candy. It's a towering mountain of this undulating taffy that's just eating itself over and over and over again.
Pardon me. Who are you?
Who are we? Who are you?
I am the Greedy. Welcome to the Taffy Pit.
And as soon as Raggedy Ann lets slip that she has a candy heart sewn inside,
he wants to eat it.
That's what he wants. He wants to eat that. He thinks that is going to fulfill him. Takes out a pair of scissors and he's trying to get into Raggedy Ann's candy heart.
It's like, dude, you're made of candy.
Yeah, I know.
Why do you need to eat a candy heart?
So, of course, he's got his own song. Every character has their own song.
Yes.
And they escaped by causing a taffy lanch.
Taffy lanch.
So they get out of there, and they immediately run into Sir Leonard Looney.
Oh, I thought it was Larry Looney.
So I'm guaranteed that
Looney
John
Land.
Waters based his whole persona off of Sir Leonard Looney.
That's a good call.
Welcome to Looneyland. It's where all the practical jokes in the world come from. And guess what? We're going to try them all out on you.
Come on, let's get out of here.
And Sir Leonard Looney is part of
Looneyland, I think it's called.
He serves King Cuckoo, who talk about Mel Brooks. I thought when I first saw this,
oh yeah, that's a good call.
It was Mel Brooks voicing this character. But he is a king who is tiny, diminutive, and he can only grow when he laughs. So he expands and gets bigger.
But only certain parts of him grow.
Only certain parts of him, and he only laughs when people get hurt. It's kind of like what I think is funny, actually. If you set him up with America's Funniest Home Videos,
the guy would have exploded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they are torturing Raggedy Ann and Andy so the king will laugh and get bigger. And this is where this is my favorite portion of the movie, because when they're in this Cuckoo Land place, there's this really intense section of animation. It's like almost like Escher. It's
MC Escher.
Black and white.
Yeah, it's pretty trippy because they're falling down a spiral staircase. They're being chased by Looney there.
Now, it's this scene and the greedy that stuck with me the most as a kid. So these are the two that are in the forefront of my memory.
Okay.
Yeah, and it doesn't disappoint, the scene, even though it's very short, and I wish it would go on just a little bit longer, but this Escher-like scene where they're going through this cuckoo land for the first time, and it goes in the black and white, and all this bizarre imagery is very impressive. So then they escape the king in this yellow submarine, Monty Python-esque boat contraption.
Yep.
And so they're finally on their way to catching the pirate ship now that they're on water. The king doesn't want to let them alone, though, because he knows that he can actually achieve his full potential through this Raggedy Ann and Andy.
His full potential.
They are going to give me the greatest laugh of them all. They are going to give me the laugh I have been waiting for all of my royal life. They are going to give me the laugh that will make me bigger than anybody ever was. Ever!
Really? What's that?
The last laugh.
So they catch up with the pirate ship, and you're kind of afraid that they do because you don't know what's happening to Babette on this pirate ship.
Right.
But she has taken over the ship.
She's mutineered the captain.
She's mutineered the captain, who's in chains below, and she's taken the ship and the crew, and she's on her way back to Paris. She wants nothing to do with the playroom. She does not want to be rescued.
I wouldn't either.
No.
Now, get your things, dear. We're going home.
Just one moment, you rebel rabble. I am not going anywhere except Paris.
Oh, where's the captain?
I am the captain now.
And it's like I get it, but it's like, wasn't the captain their friend first? Like, why would you care, right? I'd be like, let them have some fun.
So they get to the ship.
And is that where we meet that Gadzooks?
The Gadzooks,
The Gadzooks.
Which is like a big inner tube, like an
ocean. He's got that inner tube valve for like a lip or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So he attacks the ship along with the king, and as they're tickling everybody.
Ready, aim, tickle, which was just like, dude, you just took it to the creep level.
So now the king is expanding, and it just another creepy thing that the king expands while this is happening. So whenever he's happy, he expands. So he is blowing up like the Goodyear blimp.
State parade, yeah.
And then Queasy, who is the parrot of the parrot of the captain, sees an opportunity here, flies into the ever-expanding king, explodes him, and then they travel back through the dimension into reality, back into Marcella's backyard.
Right, so now it cuts back to real life.
It cuts back to an actual...
You realize that the water is like a puddle.
The puddle, yeah. So you're thinking, okay, did all this take place in a heightened reality where?
Well, I wanted to see
left the backyard
of candy that they,
Yeah, I know. How does the candy correlate to anything?
Right. Yeah.
So she finds in this puddle in her backyard the pirate ship, Raggedy Ann and Andy, who are floating in the water, Marcella, who's floating in the water. So these dolls are ruined, basically.
Right. She never questions like where the pirate ship came from because it was in a snow globe.
It was.
How did you get outside? And then you now have a camel, which you never owned.
So this is the end of the movie. She takes everything back into the playroom. And the camel, who's in a pile of leaves, she never saw the camel. So he's like at the window. He's watching them sing the finale song. And then Raggedy Ann and Andy sees him and lets him in. So the very end of the movie, Marcella comes into the playroom. She sees the camel, which she's never had before, and just kind of accepts it.
Right.
That's the end of the movie. Okay. She's part of the playroom.
Yeah. So she never, right. So lesson here, never leave the playroom. I was reading a review of this, and the actor who played the voice of Andy is Mark Baker, and somebody wrote Mark Lynn Baker, and I'm like, Cousin Larry from Perfect Strangers?
Yeah, that's what I had to look it up.
I looked it up. It's not
the same guy.
That would have been pretty cool because he would have been pretty young, but yeah, someone didn't do their homework. The one thing that I found, which was interesting, it's like you said, once you start connecting the dots and you realize just how closely Toy Story hewed to this storyline is pretty impressive, especially because it's really kind of gone by the wayside. No one really talks about it or.
Yeah, this movie doesn't exist in any official form. We had to see it on YouTube because it's not available on DVD.
Supposedly there's a restored widescreen version available online. That's not what I watched.
Yeah, no, I watched the Pan and Scan.
It is. I didn't even give it buckets, to be honest with you. No, I'm not saying. I'm just saying I didn't write down buckets. I always hate poo-pooing on something that one of us liked as a kid, and it just has a special meaning to it. It's definitely worth checking out. I would probably only go about 2.5.
Right.
The songs are just.
Now, Joe Raposo, again, who we mentioned before, who wrote these songs, crafted a stage version of this, and he called it Ragdolly, which is one of the songs on the soundtrack.
Yep.
But the thing is that this storyline in the stage version, Marcella is dying and journeys with Raggedy Ann and Andy to find the doll doctor to mend her broken heart. So that's the plot line of the stage version, which unsurprisingly did not really play to audiences.
I did read at one point that they wanted this to be live action.
The whole thing live action?
Yeah, that they would be live dolls, and I guess they just couldn't make it happen.
Yeah, now, in the late 70s, again, this movie failed pretty miserably at the box office, and then it had a little bit of a life on cable and then on CBS. But Chuck Jones, in 1978 and 1979, produced 2 Raggedy Ann and Andy holiday specials. One in 78, a Christmas special, and one in 79, a Halloween special. And it was done in that very Chuck Jonesy type of animation, that Dr. Seussy, Grinch Stole Christmas, and then Ricky Tikki Tavi type animation.
Okay.
Nowhere near what this movie looked like. So I was always I remember watching those specials as a kid and being disappointed that it didn't really tie that closely into the movie. It didn't give me that same illicit flavor that the movie did.
This is illicit's a good word.
Yeah, but those specials have probably gone into even further obscurity than the movie has. You really have to search those 2 specials out that only aired once a piece on CBS. But yeah, for maybe 3 years there, 77, 78, and 79, there was a glorious Raggedy Ann renaissance on CBS.
Glorious.
Consecutively. So just because it loomed so large in my childhood, I would go 3 buckets.
There you go.
I would go 3. It really does bring me back every time.
It's a sight to behold.
Yeah, and I actually had the camel. I had a stuffed camel that was put out by Knickerbocker from this movie.
I think that's what I think I remember. It's just because he's very cool looking.
He is.
I can't say that I saw the movie, but the camel stuck with me.
Mm-hmm. And it's very similar in size to the camel that you see at the end of the movie. The actual
really?
live action.
It was a pretty sizable doll.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had that for the longest time.
Did you?
I wish I still did. Yeah. I wish I still did. So yeah, 3 stars from me.
Nice.
Or 3 buckets. Right. I'm sorry, 3 buckets from me.
Listen, if you have any interest, if you're intrigued, check it out.
Yeah, even if you're an animation fan, it's just really an anomaly in animated movies. It's the only thing I could compare it to, like I said before, are those borderline porn type movies like Fritz the Cat.
Fritz the Cat. But storyline wise, it's you really see the genesis of where Toy Story came from.
Yeah. So I'm glad that you at least concede to that, Jeff. Thank you.
There you go. It's out of our system now.
So what were we going to do as confessional? Were we going to go favorite toy or
confessionals?
We've talked about favorite toy before, so I don't know.
Have we really?
Yeah, because I brought up the Millennium Falcon.
Okay. Because if you think about it, if you want to go toys that should be made into a movie, we could kind of dig deep and go there.
Right.
Because there were a couple of toys I had that were not films.
Which was pretty rare because after a while, they were mining everything.
Yeah.
Once G.I. Joe, I think, came hit, then it was just Masters of the Universe. It was like gloves were off.
So since you came up with the question, what toy do you think really deserved its own movie?
I never had this toy, but I was obsessed with the comic book. Marvel had the license for Rom the Space.
I was going to say the same thing.
Are you really?
This is my answer.
No way.
Yeah.
Get out of here. I never owned a toy, and it was like a throwaway toy, right? Like there was no story behind it. But Marvel somehow had the licensing right around the same time they had the Micronauts.
Yes, they did.
And those 2 of those books I absolutely loved, and I read them religiously. I'd go to my Sugar Creek 7-Eleven once a week and pull those things off the spindle rack. And the potential for, just, again, Mike brings this up a lot of times, which is you're just so hungry for some kind of space adventure once Star Wars came out. And I just thought Rom was, I love the Micronauts, but the toys didn't look like what the characters were in the Marvel comics. And I always liked the Marvel, and they've never done anything with those characters. That's been rebooted a number of times. But Rom the Space Knight, I thought would have been a perfect, cool little adventure to see on the big screen.
It totally would have. And I had the toy. So he was probably a 12 or 13 inch.
Yeah, he was sizable.
Yeah. There was no articulation, unfortunately.
No, but he had that cool, he's just got that really neat, iconic square head with the, almost like Bender from Futurama. The very Cylon-y looking.
Yeah, very reminiscent of the Cylon with his red glowing eyes. Yep. It was a Parker Brothers property. Yeah. And I think that Marvel came out with the comic to tie in with the Parker Brothers toy.
I almost want to say that the comic came with the toy.
It did, yeah.
It did, okay.
So I think Marvel were commissioned to come up with the story of Rom, and then Parker Brothers would put out the doll. Yeah. But the thing is that it could never really exist in the Marvel universe because Parker Brothers always held the rights, and they still do.
Yeah.
So Rom's enemies were the dire wraiths.
Yep, the dire wraiths.
They would disguise themselves as human beings, and only Rom could see who the real dire wraiths were.
Right, and he was an alien who was trapped in that suit. He was one of a number of space knights.
Correct, and they were sent out across the universe,
a force, like the Nova Force, that we see in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, and it's almost like if you think of the movie They Live, that's kind of like what the dire wraiths were. They were disguised on Earth.
And once they were exposed, and they had like these barbed tongues that would suck the soul out of you or energy or something like that.
And only Rom could see them as they were, so he would kill them, but it would look like to others that he was killing humans.
Yeah, yep.
So the dire wraiths, I think, continued on in the Marvel universe because they were Marvel characters, but Rom did not, unfortunately.
I'll share a quick story with you, which was back in the day in my my art years. I was working with Topps Trading Cards, and we did this product that was Marvel Masterpieces. And they usually give you a list of characters that you can and can't do. And of course, I was looking to be as obscure as humanly possible. And I added Rom. I actually drew Rom, and he was approved. And then afterwards, the product was released, and they immediately said, "Yeah, you shouldn't have done that." So there are Rom Space Knight sketch cards out there in the world that I did.
Nice.
That shouldn't have been out there because I really didn't have the rights to him.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's unfortunate that nothing ever came of that.
I know. So what is Parker Brothers doing with it? It's not like they benefit by sitting on them. Let Marvel do something with it.
Yeah, I wonder though, because Marvel created all the backstory, same thing with the Micronauts. Like we see what was done with the miniatures in Ant-Man. Like you could do a phenomenal Micronauts type of story where, they come to our universe and they get, they're small and tiny running around. But I don't know if they would have the rights to be able to use the likenesses or the characters they created specifically for the comics. I don't know how that works. And maybe it's just a legality issue.
Yeah, but no, that was my answer. There
you go. Look at that. See, we're on the same page at some point.
So let's talk about next week. I'm very excited about it.
I am so excited for next week.
So not only are we talking about Good Omens, which neither of us have sat through all of it yet. I'm 2 episodes in, and Jeff just said earlier that he's 4 episodes in, but it's very promising so far.
Yes. It's probably the most fun I've had watching a TV show or a movie in a very long time.
Yeah, one of the best of recent memory for me as well.
Yeah, and a lot of it has to do with the 2 main cast members.
Yeah.
So we'll get into that.
And not only this, but we are finally visiting the world of Ridley Scott's Legend next week. Yes. Oh, I can't wait till Mike sees it.
I cannot think or talk about Legend without thinking of Highlander because I saw the 2 of them on the same day. Back to
what
back.
A double feature. What a double feature.
Snuck from theater. That was when I was in college, and we snuck from one theater to the other. And those 2 movies are so ingrained in my brain as probably one of the first times where I really saw film as art.
Definitely.
Especially this movie is just, and Tom Cruise has gone on record that he had a horrible experience. He'd never make another movie like this again. But we'll get into it because if you're not familiar with this movie, it is unlike anything Ridley Scott had ever done. before or since.
Yeah, it's true. He's not really dipped his toes into the fantasy genre.
No, nor is Tom Cruise.
Yeah, no.
Tim Curry's character, Darkness, is just so iconic and so well
I know, and
realized.
He is unrecognizable in this movie.
Glorious. Absolutely stunning, beautiful.
Now, Jeff, what version are we going to watch? Should we stay true to the original theatrical?
I think we have to. I do have the multiple on my DVD.
Yep.
So I think there's the European version has. So the Tangerine Dream, I think, was the one I saw in the theater.
Yeah, that's the US theatrical version.
Yeah, it makes it a completely different movie to me.
Yeah, the European version has the Jerry Goldsmith score.
Goldsmith, yeah. Which I don't know why. Like, why would you do that?
Well, that was the original. That was the original version.
That's the original?
Yeah.
Oh,
and then I guess it didn't play well with audiences, so Ridley Scott tried to go back and retool it completely, and that's when the Tangerine Dream came into it.
Interesting. Okay. All right. So we'll get into it.
Yeah.
So yeah, very excited.
All right. Yeah. Next week, Good Omens and Legend.
Yes. Nice.
Come on back.
Awesome. That's it, kids. We're out this week.
All right.
Hopefully next week Mike will be back. Yeah, he's probably in for Legend. Good Omen. Not so much for Raggedy Ann.
Dodged a bullet, did he?
There you go. Yeah. Bastard. All right. Out.
Out. Bye.
Come and play with us, Danny. Forever and ever and ever.
Hello? Is somebody there? Mr. Marbles?